Son, United States Army Sergeant Shane Parsons, as her inspiration to do more with life. Shane's father died just 6 months after he was born, leaving Cindy a widow at age 29. She had to muster all the strength she had to raise her son alone. They made it through that difficult time, but when Shane joined the Army, Cindy's strength would once again be tested. While deployed in Iraq in 2006, Shane and I were there at the same time in some of the same areas. While deployed in Iraq in 2006, Shane's convoy was hit with an improvised explosive device. He suffered catastrophic injuries that included multiple cardiac arrests, a severe traumatic brain injury, his left leg being severed, and the amputation of his right leg. His mother, Cindy, left her job as a registered nurse and flew across the world to be with her son while he underwent 15 surgeries and battled multiple infections. For the next decade, Cindy served as Shane's primary caregiver and learned firsthand the challenges faced by the family members of injured veterans. Her passion for helping others led to her to become a strong advocate for the family support members of the Wounded Warriors. In 2009, she helped Wounded Warrior Project lobby Congress for the passage of the Caregiver and Veteran Omnibus Health Service Act in 2010, a bill providing assistance and support for caregivers of injured servicemen and women returning from war. With Cindy's help, Shane's progress was slow and steady, but wildly successful. While attending a WWP event in PA, Shane met his future wife, Jennifer. Now Jennifer is his primary caregiver, and his mother, Cindy, has been promoted to her favorite role of all, grandma. Shane always says, never give up, says Cindy, and he never did. I'm so proud of him for his service, but also for his resilience. He always wanted children, but didn't know if it was possible because of his injuries. Now he's so proud of his son, and he's such an amazing dad. It warms my heart. Today, Cindy travels the country to share her story of hope and perseverance. In addition to her public speaking and advocacy work, Cindy served on the board of the Brain Injury Association of Ohio and is a member of the National Speakers Association. Please help me welcome Cindy Parsons.
Before I begin, you are amazing. And all of your advocacies and all of your friends and families that followed you, amazing. The ultimate sacrifice, the ultimate test of a person is when you've been tested beyond your limits, mentally and physically. But it's in those moments when we struggle that determine who we really are. She demonstrated that today as well as many, right? I know this well because I've been tested, and I have my son who showed me the way to resiliency and overcoming adversity. Maybe it was a time that I was in high school and I had 1 month to graduate, and my father was severely burned, 75% of his body, while he tried to light a pilot light in our basement. It was the propane, it's odorless, tasteless, and it exploded. I vowed when I walked in to see my dad severely burned that I would become a nurse someday and never treat my patients the way I saw my father treated. He succumbed to death 5 days after being severely burned, which rocked my world as an 18-year-old. Then I met the love of my life, my husband, Rick. We got married. We were married 7 years, but no children. We wanted children desperately, but it didn't happen. You see, my husband had cancer. We found out he had a brain tumor the size of a grapefruit in his brain. No symptoms, no signs, until one day. They did an MRI and found this tumor. And I asked God, I don't even have this child because the prognosis was not good. 1 month before he started chemotherapy, I found out I was pregnant. We had a little boy, and he named him Shane. And before my husband passed away, I promised to him that I would be the best mother I could be and do whatever I could so that my son would be productive in this world and do good, no matter what it was. Shane was quite a handful, let me tell you. Very active. Didn't listen to mom all the time, especially as a teenager. It was rough. It wasn't easy. How many moms do we have that have teenagers here today? Oh my goodness. It was rough. And then 9/11 occurred. I remember I was in a lecture. I was a late bloomer for a nursing student. So I remember they stopped our lecture. They made us all leave the campus. I get home, and there's my son waiting for me. They sent him home from school. And we're watching TV, and we're watching the Twin Towers fall. But what really got us is we watched those first responders running toward that devastation, knowing very well what could happen. That left an impact on both of us that day, but it made a deep scar in Shane. Because he said, how dare they come onto our soil and attack innocent people and take lives? I can't stand here and do nothing, Mom. I have to do something. I'm going to join the service and follow in your father's footsteps, who served during Korea, and my grandpa Parsons, who served during World War II. But I said, wait a minute, you got to finish school first, dude. I'm not signing you up. You're too young. I thought he would change his mind, but he didn't. He left for boot camp 1 month out of graduation to Fort Benning, Georgia. Do we have any veterans here? Army? Fort Benning, Georgia. 1 month out of high school. At that time, we were fully engulfed in Operation Iraqi Freedom. I remember watching the TV and watching on the bottom of the TV how many wounded, how many killed. I was terrified. I poured myself into work. By then I graduated and went on to work in several medical facilities and med-surg and in ER. And as he gave me the word that they were sending him to Ramadi, Iraq in 2005 in December, I was terrified. But I had to pull it together because I was very proud of him for standing up and doing something. And also sacrifice his young life to do whatever he could to protect our freedom. September 30th, 2006, I'm forwarding ahead. He only had like less than 2 months and he would have been home from his first tour. I get a phone call on a Saturday morning, September 30th. Yes, this past Thursday was his 15th alive day. Can I bother someone for a tissue because I am not prepared? I need a tissue, please. When the phone rang, I had just pulled a 12-hour shift. Thank you, dear. I had just pulled a 12-hour shift in ER in a local community hospital where I live. And when I got home, it was early in the morning and the phone rang. And I thought, okay, that's Shane. He's calling me, telling me, you know, I'm okay, here I am. Because, you know, I would get those phone calls. Only this time it wasn't Shane. It was a stranger telling me that my son had been critically wounded and I had to stand by the phone and wait to hear further instructions. I thought it was a dream. I thought it wasn't real. When they finally gave the second and third call, I dropped to my knees because they told me Shane had lost his left leg and it severed his right leg and they had to amputate it to save his life. He was 21 years old. 21. And I remember sitting on that floor. What are we going to do now? Because as a nurse, I knew the ramifications. I knew how difficult this would be. But as a mom, you do whatever you have to. Whatever you have to protect your babies, right? I stood back up. I cleared myself off, brushed myself off, and okay, now we begin the fight. And I yelled in my kitchen, Shane, don't you die. You fight, because Mama's coming. And talk about a mama bear, right? So they send me to Launchville, Germany. I get off that plane. I get into the room, and I prepared myself. Of course, they debrief you. They want you to know what's happening and what to prepare for. And all I can remember is when the doctor's telling me, I'm hearing this, like a Snoopy, blah, blah, blah. I didn't hear a word he said. Just let me get to my son. When I walked in that room, I saw my strong, handsome son swollen beyond recognition with every type of equipment to maintain life. But I didn't cry because I know he could hear me. And I yelled as loud as I could, "Shane, don't you die, because I know you can do this, you fight." And I like to tell everybody, he finally listened to me. He heard me. And boy, did he fight. He was so 𝗪𝗀𝗄𝗏 because you see that day he volunteered on his day off to prevent the enemy from attacking their troops. He volunteered to do this mission and they were waiting. An EFP, explosive form penetrator, was detonated as he drove the lead Humvee in the mission. When it blew a coffee can-sized hole on the driver's side, it severed that left leg, severed the right, and the gunner seated at the right of him lost his left leg and had facial and arm damage as well. You see, what he sustained is a signature wound of Iraq and Afghanistan, which is called invisible wound of war, a severe anoxic traumatic brain injury, severe above-knee bilateral amputee, post-traumatic stress disorder, invisible wound of war, and severe depression, invisible wound of war. When they brought him back to stateside, they put me on the C-130 seated next to him because it was so severe, we didn't know if he'd make the flight home. And when he arrived at Walter Reed Army Medical Center, he fought, continued to fight infections, 15 surgeries to his limbs because they took more tissue, more bone, because of the soil in Iraq is so contaminated with 𝗙𝗏𝗏𝗏. It just kept going shorter and shorter. He's very short. But the hardest part was not the wounds. Is when he woke up, he didn't know who I was. Would he ever know who I was? I don't know. And then I thought, well, maybe it's for the best that he wouldn't remember what happened to him. But no. In time, the swelling in the brain went down. And one day he said, "Mom, where the heck have you been?" I said, "I've been here every day." And I said, "That's day number 1 of rehabilitation." And while we're in Walter Reed Army Medical Center, we had some visitors. And it was Wounded Warrior Project. And they donned a shirt like this, with the fireman carrying, one soldier carrying the other. We had no idea the significance of that day. When they walked up to Shane and they said, "Shane, we're here for you and your mom. And if there's anything you need, you let us know." And they gave him a backpack full of comfort items and some clothing and things. I had no idea that the mission is to honor and empower wounded warriors with a vision to foster the most successful generation of service members in the history of any war. And since 2003, they've tirelessly helped our wounded warriors return from military life to the civilian world, including their families. There's so much more to the story, but I'm just going to tell you a few more items because I know we have other speakers here today that have important things to say. Shane fought for his life. And when I had to sit across from him and tell him, "You lost your legs," he wouldn't accept it. You see, we love to dance. He's very athletic. He loved football, wrestling, fishing, hunting. He wouldn't accept it. And then one day I found him crying and I said, "Shane, tell me what's wrong." He said, "I should have died." I said, "No, you're here for a reason. And you will figure that out. Not me, you will figure that out." When he finally came home, it was difficult. I was worried about suicide. I personally, both of us, while he was at one of the medical facilities, military medical facilities, it was a weekly event. It was horrifying. And I was scared. I mean, we live in a small town west of here, a little town of Fostoria. And of course, there's not a lot of wounded warriors there to support him. Yes, family, friends, good community. But he got very depressed and got scared, and that's when Wounded Warrior Project kicked in. We have several programs and services that help our warriors, but the most severely wounded, we have a program called the Independence Program, and I have to tell you real quick about this. It helps those that are severely wounded that require a caregiver that takes care of them 24/7. And the goal is to bring people in that they find to help them transition into the community. Well, guess what Shane wanted to do? They let him choose. He wanted to coach football. He said, I was good at football, I want to coach the youth. So they brought the right people in. It was a young man named 𝗙𝗂𝗏𝗏 from Tiffin University who happened to be a track coach who also played football in his day in high school. CJ worked with him 4 days a week for several hours a day. Now, my son lost the ability to read and write. He has short-term, long-term memory losses, cognitive deficits for life. That will never change. But CJ worked around that. And he had to be CPR certified to work with students in Ohio, youth. And the curriculum, he had to complete an online computer class and pass it, which he did everything very well with CJ's help. He ended up coaching junior high and high school football in Full Story. He coached his alma mater and defensive assistant coaching. But the most important part is he felt he got his self-confidence back. Because he felt that nobody would respect him anymore with no legs, not being able to drive. He learned through this community and outreach and going out and helping the youth that he can move forward. And then he went on to do more. Soldier Ride. I knew she just competed in the Soldier Ride. Where was this at? In Chicago. Now, most all of us, 2 legs, 2 arms. Shane only uses his arms. He went on to hunt and fish. He even talked me on jumping out of a perfectly good plane. Can you imagine? I thought I was going to die, but we did it. He has gone on to do many programs and services. Wounded Warrior Project Talk, with community and working with other families, meeting other warriors. That's the most important part, is collaborating with other warriors, because he said nobody understands me better than my sisters and brothers. Not you, anybody, Mom. Nobody understands me. And like you heard today, he is now married and I have a grandson, and he continues to do adaptive sports. Keep an eye out. He plays for the Columbus Blue Jacket disabled team, the Sun hockey team. Keep an eye out, you'll see his name. And if he was here today, he would tell you that he would do it in another heartbeat if he would go back and fight for this country, because he said, I do it for my friends, my family, and my community, because I love them dearly. Ronald Reagan once said, freedom is never more than one generation from extinction. We did not pass it to our children in bloodstream. It must be fought for and protected for them to do the same. The ultimate measure of a person's life is when you've been tested mentally and physically beyond its limits. But it's in those moments that we struggle to determine who we really are. And today I think Dawn has exemplified that, and all of you for being here today. I thank you very much. Please go to woundedwarriorproject.org to hear more of our stories, of our programs and services. I didn't even touch on a little bit of it, so please look them up. Thank you.